Okay, good afternoon. We're continuing and hopefully finishing this introduction section. I hope someone is going to pick up the books for Miriam's today. I'm hoping so we can give them out for tomorrow. And we were on footnote tests. We're talking about that the real pleasure of everything in this world comes from that spark, that divine energy that comes from Hashem. And we said, if you enjoy that little spark that comes from Hashem, certainly if you would connect directly to Hashem, you would like that even better. So that's why service of Hashem has to be a very pleasurable thing. However, there is what we call the klipos. The klipos are those things that masquerade as a spiritual pleasure, but they're not. It's something that for it really is a pleasure that, conceals HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you see the pleasure, but you don't see Hashem behind that, and you think it's pleasure that has nothing to do with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we have to be careful to peel away the klipa and to realize what's behind the klipa, and that it is indeed Hashem. So now we're back on the last footnote on right over here by Tess, where I've got the little cursor over there, and he's going to say the following. V'hinei, here's the question we left you off with yesterday. Tzorech lohavin, we have to understand, eich yesh lahem koach l'ramos. How does the klipa have the power to trick us? Kilu sheyesh tanu gam b'dvarim shelahem. That these things also have a pleasure, which are dahainu kol advarim asurim, things that are usur. There are things that are usur. So how something that's usur, something you're like, for example, treif. Okay, how could treif taste good? How can you get pleasure from it? Hashem does not want you to have that. But yet there is pleasure, because if there wasn't pleasure in treif, no one would eat it. But if that's the Ratzon Hashem, but that's not the Ratzon Hashem. So he answers as follows. It's tricky here, but you need to know. Just like everything in the creation. So there, everything in the world has a spark that gives it life. As the Pasuk says, and you give life to all of them. So I'll say, Gam leklipa. So the klipa is also a creation, isn't it? Just like if you recall in one of the 10 fundamental principles of the Baal Shem Tov, that we said that even the Yetzer Hara is from Hashem. And everything that's from Hashem. So there can't be anything that's not from Hashem. So even the klipa, even the treif meat, yesh nitzut shemer lahem. There's a spark that gives them light. But it's very, very, very concealed, much more than things that are allowed. There's many, many garments covering it up. And in the brackets, as the Zohar says, the lace bria ba'alma, the lace beinahira dokik zo'ir misitra dekucha. There isn't any creation in the world that doesn't have some kind of light that shines from the side of holiness. It's with a lot of concealment until you can't recognize God at all. Okay, anyway, it's a whole discussion. He doesn't want to get into that now. Shlomo, you have a question. Your hand is up.
Yes, Rabbi.
So what's your question? Yeah.
My question is, when we had studied earlier, we said that only good comes from above. So how are we going to define this?
You're asking, we said it only good. Okay, so ultimately, this will be good. What do I mean? So you're asking, how could my eating treif be good? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So how?
No, because it is absurd. Then, yeah.
Yeah, so let's say I ate treif. So how is it possible, or I did an Aveira, right? How is it possible that it could be good? Anybody got an answer? There's, wow, 1, 2, 3. It's 5 people. Oh, you could see them. That's right. Okay, how about if you do tshuva? out of love.
That's good after the fact.
But I'm saying, but what happens when you do tshuva out of love? What happens to that? What happens to that avera?
Yeah.
It becomes a
nullified.
mitzvah.
Yeah.
So good can come out of it.
Yeah, but you know,
Thank you.
here is just so you can do
I understand. We don't do it, but if we did, then that's a way. That's a way. So I'm just saying that it was always good can come out of it. Now, it could be good not to do it too. It'd be better, as we'll see in a minute. Now, here's the point. So now, how come I'm enjoying that treif meat? Because there's that spark that keeps it alive. Now, here's the difference when you're eating kosher and eating treif. But since that spark is concealed in the peel, what does appear to the person? He's figuring the pleasures from the sin. And he makes a mistake and thinks that that's where he's drawing himself to that. Therefore, there's the test to take it or not. He is saying, yeah, maybe God doesn't want me to do it, but I'm getting a heck of a lot of pleasure out of it. So I'm going to do what God doesn't want me to do. But the truth is, she'ein b'klipa atzma shum tov. But the klipa's essence, the peel itself, really doesn't have any good. Ela hatov atanik sheba. Any pleasure that really comes out of it, hurak mehenitz says that only comes from the spark. The spark is what's really making the klipa look attractive. And makes it attractive. And it is attractive when you're eating it. Okay? So now you're going to understand an interesting phenomena. When does a person really enjoy doing the Aveira? Well, he enjoys the anticipation of the Aveira. He enjoys while he's doing the Aveira. But what about right after the Aveira? For some strange reason, he doesn't enjoy it anymore. You find a lot of examples of this in the Torah. You found when Amnon, the half-brother of Tamar, raped, he was lovesick for her, mamish. And he made a whole scheme in how he's able to have her alone with him, and he raped her. And after he raped her, he just threw her in the garbage, as it were. What's going on? So he says, the reason, if somebody gets seduced and goes for that klipa, to get the pleasure he thinks he's going to get out of it. The truth is, even though there's a brief fleeting pleasure, but at the end of the thing, tummy, always, who yotze me'uchsav, he always ends up disappointed. It never makes you happy. Because even in that first moment, he does, so to speak, interface with that spark, because it is there. He gets a pleasure. Immediately afterwards, the spark leaves. It's a very, very small little spark, and wasn't meant to be really used, and therefore whatever attraction that appeared to it is gone. Why? What's the purpose of a nitzuz? What's the purpose of a spark? The purpose of the spark, Shu'or Hashem. The essence, rather. What's the essence of the spark? It's the light of Hashem. Now, that light of Hashem, ozi efshel lekachto im masa isur. You cannot take the light of Hashem through a prohibited act. Im machshava shataynu kushal klipa, or if you're thinking that the pleasures comes from the klipa, kizastira gemura. That's a complete contradiction. Very interesting idea he's saying over here. So you got this piece of treif meat. It's got energy of Hashem that's in it. And that energy in Hashem is going to give you a really good taste. and you're not supposed to eat it, and you eat it, and of course it tastes good because the light of Hashem is giving it good. But now that you are interfacing with that sin and doing an Avera is the antithesis to the will of Hashem. And therefore, the pleasure leaves. It's gone. Because now it's being in a place where it doesn't want to be. So it's not there. Okay. So so he's going to get to a question, but first we'll take your question, Rick.
So does that only relate to transgressing negative mitzvahs, or can you say that for positive mitzvahs, or transgressing positive mitzvahs as well? For instance,
Do we say this for transgressing negative mitzvahs or not doing positive mitzvahs, such as?
So we can say this for negative mitzvahs because that's what you just you talked about.
Yeah.
Positive mitzvahs, for instance, I don't know, not keeping Shabbos. So it's not like you get tremendous.
Let's do a simpler example because you're desecrating the Shabbos.
Okay.
How about a person is lazy, doesn't go to shul?
Right. So you don't get so much pleasure from it. It's just
Rabbi, what's the question?
I'm sorry. The question is, do we say the same rule that when you do a sin, that the spark leaves right away? How about when you don't do a positive mitzvah, does the same rule apply? So let's say you are lazy, you didn't go to shul. So you're getting a pleasure out of not going to shul because you're sleeping in more. So does that pleasure go away? That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah.
The answer is yes. Because usually when you don't go to shul, you sleep in, you don't feel good about yourself. When you hit the snooze button, it feels good that you're sleeping a little longer. But then when you get up at 11, you feel lousy. Okay, so there's no way. Now this explains another phenomenon that he doesn't talk about. Okay, how about let's say you're not doing an Avera per se. Okay, you're eating kosher food, but you're a glutton. Okay, which is also not good. You're not practicing Kedoshim Tiyu. So does it work as well? It does, because there's another point. What if you're doing a mitzvah, but you don't like it? Well, you can't be tasting the pleasure either. It's not possible to taste Hashem if you don't want to. That's why a mitzvah without kavanah is like not a mitzvah. Okay, let's say you're eating food, but not for the right reason. So what are you eating it for? For the klipa, obviously. Now, you got a luscious rib steak. Is it prohibited to eat a luscious rib steak? No, it's not prohibited. You could eat it, but you better be thinking, you got to think really hard to put Hashem front and center in a rib steak. You can, but it's going to take a lot more effort. On the other hand, if you're just thinking of the klipa, well, in the klipa is what's giving you, so they're getting some pleasure, but then eventually that pleasure goes away because you're not using it properly. So therefore, what happens, usually you become addicted. You need more and more because the pleasure goes away. So you have to get another pleasure and another and another. And that was really what comes out from addictions, that they can't live because it's never sustaining you. Okay, so now the question becomes, okay, so what's this piece of tray food? How is it supposed to be used? Because there's a spark there, isn't there? Every spark wants to be used in service of Hashem. So what do you do? Just ignore it and what God created it for. She says, but the proper way is, how do you achieve the spark in something that's forbidden? Vesatanig in the pleasure. How do you get the pleasure out of a tray pig? By overcoming and surrendering to the will of Hashem. Said that through that, you redeemed from the klipa, and you redeemed from the klipa the spark of love, and you get it. When you refrain from it, then the spark says, I've accomplished my goal. And a lot of times you get the pleasure of refraining. That's already a sophisticated person. An average Joe who has a chance to take revenge and says, Torah doesn't allow me to. So what happens? You feel terrible. You don't feel good. You're saying, what a sucker I am. What a schmutt I am. But that's what the Torah says. Well, you're still not doing the right avoda. You got to say like this. Man, what was that story? I can't remember the name of the rabbi now. I know the whole story, but I can't remember the tzaddik. Maybe somebody in the studio audience who listens to this will refresh my very poor memory. I don't remember if it was somebody like the Chassam Sofer. It's that kind of a story. I just don't want to say the name with certainty. Somebody like that, or somebody like the Noda Yehuda, something of that era. Anyway, what was the story? So a rich man was in trouble and he needed a big loan, and people didn't know he was broke. So he quietly goes to the big rabbi discreetly and says, nobody knows this. I need a major loan. I need a major loan. And I hope I'll go to the Leipzig fair or wherever, make a lot of money, and I'll come back and nobody will know that I lost the money. And he was a very important person in the community. So it was a big thing that he should be taken care of. So the rabbi gives him the huge, he's got money, communal money. He gives him the money. And the guy comes back later. Mamish, everything's amazing. Everything's amazing. And he what do you call it? He comes back, gives the money back to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, to show my thanks to you, I brought you a gift. I think like a diamond ring or something like that. And he gives it to the rabbi. Now the rabbi was learning with some of the students. The students didn't know the details behind all this. They just know that he get. So the tzaddik takes a look at the diamond. He looks around it. He asks a few questions about it. How many carats is it? What is this? What is that? And he smiled. I really appreciate the effort you made for me. But this would be ribis if I would take it. It would be taking interest if I would take it. So as much as I appreciate your thoughts, your good thoughts, but I'm going to have to give it back to you. I said, okay, you're the rabbi. When he leaves, the students ask him, Rebbe, you knew it was ribis from the get-go. So why were you looking at it and fawning over it and this and that? So the rabbi said, the reason was like this. I wanted to see how valuable it was and to know that not succumbing to sin is even more valuable and more geschmack than the diamond. So I first had to show how much I valued the diamond, that I recognized the value. So now I can get the bigger geschmack out of the mitzvah of not to. If the guy would only give me, it's a cheap imitation cubic zirconium, so I didn't really give that much to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to know how much I was giving to Hashem. Now that ring had all kinds of sparks. And those sparks got elevated by my refraining from it because it was now used in my avodas Hashem. So similarly, the not kosher food has many ways of being elevated, and the simplest way is by my avoiding it. Now that spark, and and that's why the Gemara says a Jew should not say, treif, yuck, pfui, disgusting. I'd never eat treif. The Gemara says, pig, roasted duck. Wow, that's amazing. I love it. I wish I could have it. It sounds amazing. I really would want it. But Hashem said I can't do it. So why do we do that? Why do we play that game with us? To elevate the sparks. To know that really, behemoth, it's a geschmacka thing. Pig probably tastes good. And if I ate it, it'd probably be geschmack. But Hashem gave it to the non-Jews to eat. But not for me. Not for me. And when I avoid taking it, that's how you upgrade. Now, there's other ways as well. Let's say, lo aleinu, this guy his whole life never ate pig. And now, chas v'shalom, he's very sick. He's in a place where there isn't very much food. And the doctors say that you have to eat something and you got to have some protein. The only protein available is not kosher meat. Now it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to eat it. So you're elevating those sparks as well, because you're saying, really, I don't want to eat it at all. It's an aver, but now it's a mitzvah. So if it's a mitzvah, or the famous story in the Holocaust, when they had no matzah on Pesach, and it was the Seder night. Okay, even in a concentration camp, you still have a Seder. You still say the Haggadah. So they were looking around and they're saying, well, what are we going to use for the Seder? So he says, well, more, we got plenty of that. We don't have to get any more. And they just drenched their tears into a cup and they would drink their tears for their kaisos. But what about the matzah? And really the only thing they had was some bread. So there were certain Hasidim who says, Hashem, just like a whole year long, I have a mitzvah to be well. And on Pesach, there's a mitzvah to eat matzah. And just like if I would have a matzah right now, I'd eat it for you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now you have another mitzvah that I have to take care of my life and my health. And if I don't eat on 8 days of Pesach, I'll die. So I'm eating this bread as if I was eating matzah right now. Now there's a debate in the storylines if they actually said the bracha ala chilas matzah or not, which is not so simple. But anyway, but they felt that eating the bread was like eating the matzah. So what do you mean? It's Pesach. Eating bread on Pesach is chiv kores. It's one of the worst punishments. But you know what? In a concentration camp, that's the spark that's released to save a person's life, and he's doing it for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's ways where Hashem created these things, and there's many other ways that this chazer is supposed to get its sparks elevated. When the goy eats it and is involved in interacting with a Jew and benefits a Jew, and the Jew gets something from the goy and he uses it for the sake of Hashem, so the sparks of that pig are also elevated in a what do you call it? By a few steps away, right? A few shades of whatever they call it. Shades of separation, whatever they call it. Degrees of separation, because it's all for the Jews anyway. So that's how you bring it to its destination. Okay, let's go back upstairs to point Hey. Okay, it's got a couple more points to go. So we talked about the false pleasure of the Yetzer Hara, and now it kind of brings it all together. Tanug hu nekudas hanisoyin be'emuna. Pleasure is the point of the test in Emunah. That's the title of this little section now. Where does all our Emunah revolve around? It's all revolves around pleasure. From all that we've explained, explained to us, what did Hashem establish pleasure for? To be the point of test for the world. And with that pleasure factor, we can test and inspect a person, check him out. How much do you really believe in the unification principle of Hashem? How much do you really believe in Eidov Milvado? Dahainu, what does this mean? Where's the litmus test that you really believe that Hashem is the source of everything? It always revolves around pleasure. Hainu. If it's clear to the person, there is no other reality other than Hashem. And he's a source of life and a source of good. And if that's the case, you only go after God's instructions. And Hashem tells you how to use everything. And therefore, you're going to look for the pleasure and the life force only in Hashem, because you can't find it anywhere else, because they know Milvado. So in other words, Hashem says you eat this, I'm going to find Hashem there. Hashem says I don't eat this, I find Hashem by not eating this, and I get pleasure in that because it's all around Hashem. Then you understand how to deal with pleasures. But if we forget, if we lose that emunah, the emunah is, there's other things that give me pleasure other than Hashem. There's nothing to do with Hashem. You think you could have pleasure with the klipas? You can go after pleasures of the Yetzer Hara. There's certain pleasures that Hashem says is off limits. Well, let's take something a little bit more practical. How about talking Lashon Hara about somebody you really don't like? How about yelling at your spouse when you've had enough of them? You obviously must enjoy it if you keep doing it, no? Right? Isn't it so? Right? You don't do the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You must be enjoy it. You have to enjoy it. How could you do it if you don't enjoy it? So what do you say? But you know Hashem doesn't want you to do this. Well, I can have enjoyment outside of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But then you don't believe everything's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You don't believe everything's from Hashem. If everything's from Hashem, Hashem's telling you not to enjoy this. It's enjoyable, but I don't want you to enjoy it. Then you understand everything comes from Hashem. The fact that your wife insulted you and pushed your button, and now you have the opportunity to enjoy giving it to her back. That's all organized by Hashem for you to not enjoy it. See, it's. I don't think many of us have a test of eating treif anymore. So guess what? You think Hashem and the Yetzer are finished with you? If you don't have a test here, Hashem has to find a different test. He always has to find a different test. So I'm sure this Corona has all of its own tests that I'm not going to go into. People are getting tired of me every day talking about Corona. So let's just talk about other things. Talk about other things. You know, people, not everybody gets along with their kids. Not everybody gets along with their spouses. Not everybody gets along with other people at work. So now that you became really from, now you don't have to deal with associates. Hashem has to give you other Yetzer Haras. So, and if somebody now hurts your feelings, compare that to 25 years ago when you had to walk away from a plate of treif. And how much you had to pull yourself away from it and not be fooled by the foolish pleasure. Oh, but now I'm very from. I don't eat treif. I even have chol v'yisrael, but I still insult people. I'm still not so honest in business. I still don't have good middos. So what's that? That's the new pleasure that you have to overcome. And that's the same test. You'll always have a test. The test of how to use pleasure or how not to use pleasure. And if you believe that Ein Od Mavado, then you believe that everything's from Hashem. And this just like 25 years ago, this pig was so tasty and you mamash had to have it. And you were misgaber and you overcame that. And you took those sparks and gave them to Hashem. So now when you're involved in interpersonal challenges, where the person, let's say the other person's wrong, and you really want to let them have it. But Hashem says, even if they're wrong and you're the injured party, you still can't redress it in this way of talking Lashon Hara and yelling and screaming. Is not the way. There's other ways to deal with it, but not this way. But the other ways aren't fun. Hashem says that's the problem. You got to see that is the pleasure. That is the pleasure to hold yourself back. That's what it's all about, how we can decide our pleasures. Okay, we still got a little bit more to go. Good session. Okay, shkoyach everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.